Welcome to this wonderful session today. Before we start the session, I would like to introduce our guest speakers for the day. We have with us very own Mr. Devesh Pathak, the CS Devesh Pathak, known fondly in the industry circle. He is the proprietor of Devesh Pathak and Associates. Mr. Pathak is a practicing company secretary with more than 36 years of experience. He has been rendering professional services for corporate laws, insolvency, trademarks, etc., and is also an independent director on the board of several listed and unlisted companies. Mr. Pathak is also an honorary corporate law consultant for FGI and is also associated with other industry associations. Mr. Pathak holds BCom and LLB degrees and is a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. Next speaker, we have Mr. Rishi Pathania. He is the head CSR for United Phosphorus Limited. Mr. Pathania has studied from the prestigious Xavier Institute of Social Service, Ranchi, and is working with UPL as head of corporate social responsibility for UPL Group. He has around 17 years of rural development experience in different parts of the country. Mr. Pathania has been awarded the 100 Most Impactful CSR Leaders Award as a tribute to his contribution towards social and sustainability change initiatives. Next, we have Dr. Binita Verdia, the CEO of United Way of Baroda. Dr. Verdia holds a PhD in tissue culture and has published 12 research papers in national and international journals. She has also done her MBA in Operation Research and post-graduation in Marketing and Sales Management. She has a rich work experience of about 21 years across the corporate and development sectors. She earlier served in foundation of GSFC and has also served in NGOs such as Seva Mandir in Rajasthan and at Deepak Foundation. Recently, Dr. Verdia has been honored with the CSR Leadership 2021 for Excellence in Social Services Award for her remarkable contribution towards social development during the 11th edition of India CSR Leadership Summit 2021. The last but not the least, the moderator for today's session, Ms. Deepti Sharma. She's the founding director of Fin & Care. Ms. Sharma holds a corporate finance consultancy firm. She has more than 3 decades of experience across industries and sits on the board of Dholera Industrial City Development Limited, Patel Infrastructure Limited, and Axtel Industries as an independent director. Her area of expertise includes cross-border transaction, structuring, FEMA consultation, and setting up internal controls. Welcome all the speakers. May I now request the Vice President of FGI, Mrs. Aarti Basu, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Good afternoon, everybody. And Mr. Devesh Pathak, nice meeting you. The company secretary, practicing company secretary of Devesh Pathak and Associates, Mr. Rishi Pathania of UPL, heading CSR activities, Dr. Binita Verdia, CEO of United Way of Vadodara, and of course, my dear friend, Ms. Deepti Sharma, who's taking care of all kind of finance advices and related to finance services. She owns Fin & Care company. My executive and managing committee colleagues, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Federation of Gujarat Industries and all of us here, I'm happy to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest speakers, Mr. Devesh Pathak, Mr. Rishi Pathania, Dr. Binita Verdia, and of course, Deepti Sharma. The corporate social responsibility, CSR, is now a very well-known word in the industry, and in the industrial area especially, is a self-regulation of businesses. What we mean CSR is a self-regulation for businesses which aims at being socially accountable. While there are many corporate CSR initiatives which strive to positively contribute to the public, the economy, or the environment, there is no one right way in which companies can actually practice CSR. there will be different views and different definitions of the CSR with every company. In today's socially conscious environment, consumers, employees, and stakeholders have their priority on CSR when choosing a brand or a company, and they also hold corporations accountable for affecting the social changes required with their business beliefs, practices, profits. And I believe that CSR activities are really making change in India now. This also actually calls for, be the change you want to see in the world. The government of India has recently notified the amended CSR policy rules, and the amendment already in section 135 of the Companies Act, which contains the regulations governing the corporate social responsibilities of all concerned companies registered in India. We at FGI felt that this is the right time and very important for organizations, NGOs, and the individuals in CSR field to learn about the recent changes and updates that have taken place in the provisions of corporate social responsibilities. And what are the expectations from industries and NGOs which we have? We are fortunate to have with us our esteemed guest speakers and experts in this field from corporate, professionals, and renowned NGO who will enlighten us on important amendments in CSR taken place today. We will know through them the relevant rules, recent emerging trends, and industry responsibilities, know the impact assessment of CSR initiatives and CSR perspectives, considering corporates, NGOs, and the government, all three. Today, I would also like to, give a brief of FGI. The Federation of Gujarat Industries, FGI, was founded in the year 1918 in the erstwhile Baroda state under the progressive rule backed by then Sriman Sayajirao Gayakwad III. And this is an Apex Industries Association and a recognized chamber of commerce in Gujarat, having an illustrious track record of more than 103 years. We completed 103 years, and we have been serving the trade and industry for a long time now. We are proud to state that FGI has grown from strength to strength and blossomed into a mature industries association, providing guidance and hand-holding to the industry of our state and the nearing states, of course, and ably representing the concerns and the troubles faced by industries to all relevant authorities, to the state as well as to the central government. FGI has also very strongly provided representations, suggestions, and feedback to the state and the central government on the issues related to taxation policies, foreign trade, etc. FGI has successfully over the years in the result, we have put a lot of efforts. FGI's success over the years in the result of the commendable efforts put by our seniors, all our past presidents and their teams, and the valuable backing of my colleagues in the managing committee, esteemed FGI members, consultants, and of course the efficient FGI secretariat. The efforts put by all our the past presidents and the seniors have really shown the results where we stand today. Before I conclude, I would like to reaffirm on FGI's commitment to steer the growth of its member industries, and we shall continue working closely with the government for due implementation of policies and initiatives. With these few words, I conclude and invite our moderator, Ms. Dipti Sharma, to take over the session, and I am looking forward to the experts' opinion and the views on CSR from them today. Thank you so much, and we welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharti for that good introduction and welcome. I now invite Shri Devesh Pathak ji to make a presentation on the new amendment that has come in the rules for CSR. Over to Mr. Pathak, sir.
Pathak sir is a mute, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Aarti ji, Vice President, FGI, my fellow speakers, and Mr. Prabal Dave, and of course, participants. It's my utmost pleasure to share my views on recent amendments in CSR provisions under the Companies Act 2013 and relevant rules. My respect also to the companies which are engaged in CSR activities as well as NGOs also, and our corona warriors also in this critical period. As such, post-lunch session is always considered to be a difficult one, and especially when people are at home. So it is more difficult, but I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. As such, first question arises, why this discussion should be on CSR provisions. First and foremost thing, that up till 22nd January 2021, or say, to be precise, up to the financial year 1920, not spending CSR expenditure was not an offense. If disclosure was made in board report to the effect that due to so and so reasons that company has not been able to make CSR expenditures, that was sufficient compliance. With effect from 22nd January 2021, equations have changed altogether. First thing, that now excess spending can also be carried forward for coming 3 years. So far as unspending amount is also, now we have rigorous provisions in a way that if unspent amount for any year is earmarked for ongoing projects, in that case it is required to be transferred to unspent account in scheduled bank. If it is not earmarked for any project, then straight away company is required to transfer it to the fund within 6 months from the close of financial year. Apart from that, there are also other procedural changes and modalities in CSR compliances. And last but not least, I would say that even NGOs are also required to make some compliances. One of them is that they must be registered with section 80G and 12A of the Income Tax Act. They should also obtain unique CSR registration. For that, they need to file CSR1 with ROC. So these are the alarming changes. So I thought to share my alerts with you. Now, all companies are not covered under CSR provisions. 3 criteria are mentioned. Those companies are covered under CSR provisions. That is, either they have net worth of rupees 500 crores or turnover of rupees 1,000 crores or more, or net profit of rupees 5 crores or more. If either of the criteria is satisfied in any year, or rather preceding financial year, so in that case, from next year, the company is covered under CSR provisions and they should start complying the provisions. It would be interesting to know how one can make exit. As such, one would say that while talking of marriage, one is talking of divorce. But then many would be interested that when they can make exit from CSR provisions as such. So it is there that if for consecutive 3 years, any of the criteria is not satisfied, then only after 3 years, company would be out from compliance of CSR provisions. Now, the companies which are governed under CSR provisions, what they should do. So we are discussing that, right? So first thing, they should constitute CSR committee comprised of 3 directors. with at least one independent director. But if company is not required to appoint independent director, in that case, 2 or more directors without independent directors would be sufficient. In case of a private company, there are only 2 directors, so there cannot be 3 directors, or rather, it is not necessary to specially induct one more director for constituting committee of 3 members. So that 2 directors or rather 2 members would be sufficient. One more provision is inserted under the Companies Amendment Act 2020. So according to that, if CSR spending does not exceed rupees 50 lakhs, in that case they need not have a CSR committee. Of course, that doesn't mean that they did not comply with CSR provisions. This is only the relaxation in a way that they did not constitute committee, and instead board would discharge the functions. Now, what is mandatory CSR spending? What spending should be made? So, company should make at least 2% of average net profit of immediately preceding 3 financial years. This should be computed according to section 198 of the Act. So practically it is before tax profit. If company is not incorporated before 3 years, in that case, this period should be reckoned with from the date of incorporation, since incorporation. And in computing this net profit, what should be excluded? Profit from overseas branch should be excluded, and dividend received from Indian companies, which itself is also compliant of CSR provisions. So in that case, that dividend can be excluded while computing this net profit for the purpose of CSR. And preference should be given to local area. Unique provision introduced under this Act is that excess spending made in any financial year can be carried forward up to 3 years, not beyond that. If any surplus is generated, so while carrying out CSR activities, some surplus might be generated. So that cannot be used for business. So it should be added either to the project or rather plowed back to the same project, or it should be transferred to the unspent CSR account. Now, general question which is asked is that earlier spending on CSR for earlier years, say for 1920 and before that, can it be carried forward? So my answer is no, because clarification was given in the FAQs earlier. Major worry of corporates who are covered under CSR expenditure is if there is unspent amount in any financial year, what should be done? So if it is earmarked to some ongoing project, in that case they should keep in mind that they should first identify the ongoing project. That project should have already commenced, and reasons of course should be mentioned in the board report why company has not made full CSR expenditure during the year. How that amount should be transferred. So bank account should be opened in the scheduled bank with the nomenclature unspent corporate social responsibility account. And amount should be transferred within 30 days from the close of financial year. That is practically by 30th April. And then they get leverage to spend it within 3 years. And if it is not spent within 3 financial years, so in that case, that has to be transferred to the fund. If company has not earmarked or identified any project and there is unspent amount in during the financial year, so in that case, they don't have any right on that amount. They must transfer that amount to any fund within 6 months, that is by 30th September, to the fund. As such, it was felt that the government would constitute separate fund for that purpose until that company would get breathing time. But actually, it is not so. In fact, they have mentioned that there are some funds which have been mentioned in the Schedule 7 itself. So once company fails to spend spend amount at the end of the year, and if it is not earmarked to ongoing project, then they have to spend it. Transfer it to the fund within 6 months. Now, one question would arise: what is the fate of unspent amount for the early years? That is 1920 and before that. So, keeping in view FAQs, I am of the opinion that if they have not committed to carry forward that amount in their board report, in that case, jolly well they can forget that amount. Which are eligible CSR expenditures? As such, the kind of expenditures or illustrations given in Schedule 7, such kind of expenditure are eligible CSR expenditures. But more important thing is that MCA has come out by clarification that they should be interpreted liberally, and they are broad-based sort of illustrations only. So it is the essence of the activity that should be judged, and not the just letters mentioned in the schedule. Then obviously, yes, PM CARES fund, it is eligible CSR expenditure. Now, one question always arises whether CSR expenditure is eligible for any tax benefit. As such, I am not expert, but as I understand, it is mentioned in the Finance Act that it is not allowable as business expenditure, and that still holds good. But there are other sections also, like section 80G and many other sections where deduction is allowed. And the best example is of Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, where 100% deduction is allowed under the income tax. So it is eligible CSR expenditure also, and that is deductible under income tax also. So to straight away say that CSR expenditure is not eligible for any deduction would not hold good. But depending upon the sections under the income tax, that probably income tax benefits can be availed. Then yes, very recently, there are certain CSR expenditures for the purpose of COVID-19. So they are also allowed as eligible CSR expenditure, that is contribution to State Disaster Management Authority, various activities relating to COVID-19, any activity relating to COVID-19. Then ex gratia payment to temporary workers, casual workers, but not to the employees. So one-time exception is allowed for this purpose. Then carrying out awareness campaigns, program or public outreach campaign on COVID-19, vaccination program. And very recently on 22nd April, they have issued circular and clarified that setting up makeshift hospitals and temporary COVID care facilities, it is also eligible CSR expenditure. But for that, it has to be in consultation with state government. Any company cannot arbitrarily take this step. There are many items in Schedule 7. There are around 12 items. And I think one can read it easily. And as I told you, you can interpret it liberally also. So I think it fit not to discuss these items covered under Schedule 7. Then we will discuss what is ineligible CSR expenditure. So these are the, now Rule 2D provides which are ineligible CSR expenditures. So activities in the normal course of business, that is not eligible CSR expenditure, only with one exception. That if R&D activities is carried out for new vaccine, drugs and medical devices exclusively for COVID-19, then it is CSR eligible CSR expenditure. And that too, it is restricted only to financial years 2020-21 to 2020-23. So practically 1 year has already gone. So 2 years are left. And that should be in collaboration with the institute as named in Schedule 7. So in that case, it can be done. And obviously, reporting has to be made in board report for that. Then activity or spending made outside India. So primarily, it is not available. But with the exception that if it is incurred for training Indian sports personnel of national level or even international level. So in that case, it is eligible CSR expenditure. Contribution to political party, directly or indirectly, that is prohibited. Activities benefiting employees. So that is also not allowed. Even if it may be of the nature of CSR expenditure falling in the entries of Schedule 7 or relating even to COVID-19. But if it is benefiting to employees, it is not allowed. Then sponsoring activities for deriving marketing benefits. So say if some company would distribute their products free of cost, so that would be sort of say soliciting the business. So that is also not allowed. And activities in fulfillment of any other statutory liabilities. So when you are supposed to do, say when any company is carrying out some pollution-friendly activities, but if they are statutorily supposed to do that, in that case, it would not be considered to be CSR expenditure. There are some clarifications also relating to ineligible CSR expenditure, like payment of salary or wages to employees during the lockdown period. Then also it is not eligible CSR expenditure because it is the obligation of the company. Wages even to casual workers also because it is statutory obligation. So it is not CSR. And one-off events, so that is not considered as eligible CSR expenditure. CSR implementation. So how CSR implementation should be made? So basically CSR activities can be undertaken by the company itself, or it can be through some canalizing agencies. So they have given some four options, broad four options. One is that Section 8 company or registered public trust, registered society, registered under Section 12A and 80G of the income tax, established by the company singly or along with other company. Here, one thing is that in earlier set of rules, word public trust was not there. But now the word public trust is there. So it has to be kept in mind. And when company itself establishes, in that case, track record of 3 years is not required. Government. So when government would establish Section 8 company, registered trust or registered society, so that is also allowed. Any entity established under an act of parliament or a state legislature. This is a new feature. Any entity. So by stretch of imagination, any entity means any other company also, any other LLP also. Even I would say even ONGC can also carry out CSR activities. It can be interpreted like that. But probably I understand that looking to the entries of Schedule 7, as such, if you make contribution to the state government or municipality, or the sarpanch of Gram Panchayat would approach to you, technically you could not give. But I feel that this is inserted with the intention that if any entity is helping as a canalizing agency established under any act of parliament or a state legislature, in that case it appears that even registration under Section 80G or dwelling is also not required. Then last option is that Section 8 company, registered public trust, registered society, registered under Section 12A or 80G of the income tax with track record of at least 3 years. Now this canalizing agency, what they should do? They should get themselves registered by filing CSR1 with, and they would be awarded unique CSR registration. A company may engage even international organization for designing, monitoring and evaluation of CSR programs. So even help of international organization can also be taken. A company may collaborate with other companies also for establishing such type of institution. Now there are basic functions of CSR committees, etc. There are many other things also, more of procedural nature. In fact, in lighter way, I would say that we are always fond of showing wedding album to many other people. They may not be that much interested. So like there are certain provisions, I feel they are not, they don't need much discussion. So I skip them. Basic functions of CSR committee, then mandatory ingredients of annual action plan. I am not talking of Kejriwalji or Delhi. Mandatory ingredients of annual action plan. CSR policy, that also we can very well skip it. Impact assessment. Yes. So some companies are required to have impact assessment also of their project. So there are the conditions that if average CSR obligation is of ₹10 crores or more in 3 immediately preceding financial years, then only impact assessment would come into play. And that too for the project of ₹1 crore or more. And that too if it is not completed within a year from the date of impact study. And cap, that is the cap on the expenditure on the study. It shall not exceed 5% of total expenditure or ₹50 lakhs, whichever is less. It should be also be placed before the board and mentioned in CSR report also. Then administrative overheads. So these are some of the expenses which are identified as administrative overheads, like expenses for general management and administration. Now they say that it does not include direct expenses for CSR for designing, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of particular CSR projects. They say it is not administrative overhead. So we don't know, because as there is a cap on administrative overhead of 5%. So in that case, we don't know whether it would be considered as CSR expenditure falling in 95% or it would not be considered CSR expenditure at all. Then yes, CSR reporting should be made in the annual report. Rather, annual CSR report, that should be in the board's report. Creation or acquisition of capital assets. So if capital asset is already there, so in that case, deadline is given. During this deadline, company should transfer it in the name of that canalizing, respective canalizing agency or beneficiary of the project or public authority. Public authority means public authority under RTI Act. So if it is already created, this is the deadline within which company should transfer it. Role on board of directors, that also we can very well skip. Yeah, so in fact, this is the conclusion which one should keep in mind. As such, I have already told you in the beginning that we should keep in mind at least these things. So now we are reaching to the slide for which we are eagerly waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pathak, for such an enlightening presentation that you made. And I already see a lot of people pouring questions on the chat. So I request all the participants to please type out your questions on the chat box, which our panel would be able to take, and it would be more meaningful. I now invite Mr. Rishi Patania. Rishi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So when we on this journey of understanding the recent changes and updates in the corporate social responsibility provisions and industry responsibilities, we got an enlightening session from Sir Pathak ji that how the whole law has changed, and he also highlighted very nicely, leaving alone the unnecessary menu on the rules that are not changed. Want to understand from you, as a person who is heading the CSR and who has got an illustrious background of having worked on sustainability part of an organization, which is the most important thing. How do you see the policy making? How do you see the corporates embracing of this new changes? How the committees are addressed? I mean, it would be really nice if you take us through the whole journey as a head of CSR committee at UPL.
Thank you, Dipti ji. Thank you very much. Thanks to organizer for this session. And in fact, I was wondering, after Pathak ji has briefed everything, where should I start with? So we got little scope to talk about. But what I'll do is, because what happens in general is the CS fraternity in the corporate world, they are more into the whole compliance part. So it's always a black and white for them, and hardcore this needs to be done type thing. But what I've done is, for my own understanding, I have simplified few things for my own understanding, which I'm sharing, and maybe then we can have a discussion and debate how does it goes for everyone. I've made some points and I've simplified how does this change affects the organization, and what are the things that needs to be done. And maybe in the process, Dipti ji, I'll try to answer the questions that you have raised. So the major changes I've listed down, for me, it's a 14 change. The first one is, now CSR activities can be undertaken by a company or an organization promoted by company. This has to be a non-profit organization. It can be a Section 8 company, it can be a registered public trust, it can be a registered society. Important thing is this organization should have 12A and 80G. So that makes it eligible for CSR implementation. But if this is not promoted by the company, and if it's an other organization, other NGO, then it should also have a 3-year past record of doing work. So that's a first change and very important change that has happened. So essentially, it means the for-profit organization has been knocked off from the CSR implementation space. So that's the first thing I have to keep in mind as a CSR head of the organization, to make a partnership in the implementation space. The second one is any kind of organization, whether organization promoted or whether it's a separate, they have to essentially form CSR1 form electronically in MCA website effective from April 1st. It's already started. A lot of organizations have already done that. So in nutshell, every organization that is implementing a CSR project should be a non-profit organization. One, second, it should have 12A, it should have ATG and a CSR number. This is something that we have to keep in mind, because partner organizations keep on approaching corporates without understanding the basic fundamental requirement of the law. So nothing can be done if this 3 is not on place. On the same lines, briefly, Pathakji has touched upon this. There's a big change in the way CSR committee now recommends a project to the board, because earlier it was more of a kind of a broad, maybe a guidance document which was there in the form of policy plus a budget. But now I think, as Pathakji was mentioning it as an ARP, it's an annual plan, very detailed action plan, activity wise, that needs to be presented to the board through CSR committee. Now, what does this implies to a person like me or any CSR head? It essentially means anything coming in between is not worth considering, or it's not getting considered because you're taking a blanket approval right at the beginning. That's what law says. You make a plan, the committee approves that, committee approves and send it across to the board. Board approves, then you really don't have any option of anything coming in between. This is something that we really need to keep in mind. I think a very detailed how it can be done, what needs to be monitored, and what is the utilization that has been discussed. So I'll not touch upon that, but this is something that we have to keep in mind. The fourth one is the administrative overheads. Very clearly now 5% of the total. It can't be more than 5% of your total CSR budget. The fifth point is impact assessment from an independent agency. And as was said by Pathakji, the first stage gate is, first filter is 10 crore or more having an outlay. And the second is the project which is worth more than 1 crore. So it needs to be done. You have to do a third party impact assessment for this. Sixth one is acquisition of capital assets, not in company books. Also, there's a bit of a relaxation on how this capital assets can be acquired by a registered society, charitable objects, and maybe beneficiary in the form of self-help groups or any other public authority that can acquire the asset that has been created under CSR. We have spoken about surplus arising out of CSR activities. If there's any surplus, I think it has to be moved to a specified fund under Schedule 7 within a period of 6 months, and then it has to be used in next 3 years. That has been discussed. But I think the biggest change that has happened is excess CSR spend that is being done in particular financial year, not the earlier one, but whatever will be done now, that can be set off in next 2-3 years. So that's an additional that has been given. From a certification point of view, now CEO has to certify all the expenses and all the initiatives that have been done. So that really brings in a lot of credibility as well as commitment from the financial head of the organization. So he has to certify this. There's a provision of having CSR activities to include R&D for new vaccine, medicine, medical devices related to COVID. I think Pathakji has already touched, so I'll not be getting into more detail. But there's also provision to include overseas training of Indian sports person, provided the training is provided to a person who is representing the state or union territory at national level or at an international level for India. There's a provision of international organization planning, implementing, monitoring, or evaluating your CSR initiatives. Essentially, it means the big organizations like UN-based organization or the big NGOs, they can be involved in planning, monitoring, implementing, or evaluating the projects. The biggest impact that a lot of big corporate houses that have been doing a lot of CSR work for last 20-25 years will be on ongoing projects, because this is really like a big change that has happened. Now, the Act says your ongoing project can be maximum 3 years, 1 year inception plus 3 years. Now, this will be a big challenge for big initiatives that a lot of organizations have taken, especially in the field of education, or maybe in the field of health, or even in the field of livelihood. So we really have to rework, because to my understanding, this will need to be, maybe we will be requesting MCA to relook how we can do it in a much better way, because commitment for development essentially calls for long-term commitment. And if you really don't have that kind of a long commitment for a particular project, I think then it really becomes very difficult. Although I understand the MCA's perspective of capping it at 3 years, but I think we have to find a way that good projects which are delivering good benefits to the community and how it can be extended over time. But I think as of now, it clearly says it has to be 1 + 3 years. So that's the only max cap that we have for an ongoing project. Finally, reporting, from a reporting perspective, earlier it was only a CSR report with 7-8 columns. But now there's a very detailed one which needs to be filled in. Also, earlier, it was not mandatory, but now it's mandatory to disclose the composition of CSR committee, the policy, projects approved by the board on the website for public to access. So this is a big change. Also, if an organization is eligible for impact assessment, they have to put that on the website in a public domain. So these are the major changes that has really happened from a perspective of a CSR head or a CSR implementing person in the corporate. I'm not taking the complete gamut, but these are the 14 which I think I have to take care while I'm implementing a project. Going forward, I think what is happening now is we will have less option or opportunity to take up projects in between one, because at the beginning we make a plan, we get it approved at CSR committee, we get it approved at a board level. So that is the only one which will get counted by end of year for our CSR initiative. Also, with the restriction in the space of only non-for-profit organization working, that really gives kind of limitation to the startups, or maybe some wonderful that's happening through innovators or that space. So these are some of the limitation that's happening. So I'll just close here, and maybe I'll keep question answer, and I'll try to reply by way of answer to anyone raising any question. But these are the 14 important that we as a CSR fraternity have to keep in mind from a new provision. Dipti ji, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Patania. That was really quite a journey that you took us through. So, we are, when we talk about CSR for corporate, when we talk about first of the change and how the corporates address it, there's a lot of cloud in the head. In fact, as we can also see in the chat box, people having a lot of questions which we are, facing. So I would now like to invite Dr. Benita Verdia to, and share her views on the CSR activities that she is taking up, and being the implementation agency, I believe with the changes that have happened, the most positive or limiting effects that these changes have caused are felt best at her desk, and she has an illustrious career that she has been, involved with a lot of change initiatives, social development, and the awards that she has won. So I believe she'll be able to throw a good light on the whole concept of CSR. Dr. Verdia, I invite you for your views.
Oh, thank you, Dipti. It's not so that we are the small, normal people working in a situation in a community. So thanks to organizing for inviting us to share our views in this pertinent webinar. Basically, always all the things Devesh Bhai has covered beautifully, and over and above, Rishi has added all the things. So I'm not putting my any slide because it would be a totally duplication of the thing happening up. So I'll not keep any my slide. I will say the views one shares our views, what we think about it. But looking to the CSR amendment rules, we see 5 major significant changes has taken place, and everybody is has to be party to it. The first, the CSR definition has changed now. So now, because of the change in definition, we need to work how we to use the CSR funding very clearly, and they will clearly explain what is CSR now. The corporate has a very clear guidelines, and it's helping implementing partners also to work on the proposals to the CSR. So first significant change is the CSR definition. Second, the complete shift from directional to mandatory now. The CSR has now become not only directional, but it's compulsory, mandatory. So it's mandatory for the implementing partner, mandatory for the CSR corporates to work, form the committee, work proper reporting part of it, that involves CFO, everything. So it's totally a mandatory what government has made it up. Third, it is good, I would say, they have given a compulsory registration requirement for implementing partner. And this is because of the implementing partner that is registered to central government. To clear out the good NGOs, and transparency will come out of it that way. So unique CSR number, this CSR form what Devesh Bhai and Rishi put it up, it's compulsory for the NGOs, and I think all NGOs should take it up very soon, because in 1 or 2 days they're able to get the CSR form if your papers are placed very clearly. The simple online form to be filled up and that easily can be done. So almost, I think we know in Baroda, a lot of NGOs have already got this number, unique number. Fourth major change, what significant change because of this rule has come, is the increased rigor for internal controls. There a lot of work has been put on the corporates now. It's not just giving of the funds, but they have to develop the internal control system properly to monitor the program happening on the ground. So they are now party to the implementing partner. It's not just giving the funds and moving out. And in that way, it's a really good how we inclusivity will come later part of it. We can see in last coming 5-6 years, we'll able to see that change. And last but the least, but is a major change that has come on the focus on impact creation. Any project without impact, it's useless. It's not just doing one-time program and moving out the field. Always a program should be long-lasting, having a significant goal to achieve that part of it. So this 5 changes, what I see, it will helping for the implementing partners as well as the corporate to take the CSR funds in very sustainable mode to the community. That is what I see, Dipti ji.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really, you sounded so beautifully, as if, it is there as your bullet points. Yes. And this comes from the, so I would also like to, as you summed up the whole thing that, it's got more of mandatory. I think I was referring to the National CSR portal and saw that the last data that is available is on 17-18, and the percentage of CSR spent is 57%, which is a big gap. I think this is what triggered the need for having all these rules, because hitherto it was that, you would need to put aside, you would need to take the amount for the CSR spend to the board. And if you don't find any suitable option to spend, then let it be. There was no compulsion on even spending. So the whole idea of getting the inclusivity of corporate was defeated. So, but now I think, one thing that comes to my mind with the change that has happened is, how is this present amendment in CSR rule helping you in budgeting the programs, I mean, there must be some direction on it.
Perfectly. Now, because of this rules, I think is in very positive. We take it up. All the implementing partner should take it in positive, I say, because it has given two major things to us. It has given some flexibility to extend the project timelines. Earlier, the project was for 1 year, to fast run, to plan it out, to make the monitoring tools and everything, and the end of the year would come out, and then we can't say anything. The program has done effect. So, extending the timeline and giving an online project, converting to a multi-year project, and this has a very big benefit for the implement partner to showcase their program more effectively and efficiently. And over and above, it has very clearly said not restricting to the 5% admin cost for the implementing agency. Earlier, the corporate had a thing that we just need to do the 5% admin cost and the project can be run out. Now it is very clearly said it's not 5% of the implementing cost. It's basically 5%. They can keep it for their employees for corporate, and they can work with implementing with between 5 to 10 to 12% admin cost. And this will give a leverage for getting a good potential team members in the implementing partners to evaluate, to monitor the programs and design a new programs for it. So more effective program would come out because expert skills will be involved in the thing. So this extension definitely has the last phase of implementer to budget a long-term project. Initially, the project was for 1 year. This much funded, do this much project, But now, because of this extension timelines, a good project will come out, a good intervention will be there, and it will very effectively leading to a better outcome. This is what we think so.
So in the same breath, there is something which is now they're talking about the inclusivity of corporates, right? It's
Yeah.
about inclusivity and making a difference to the society. How do you address this as an implementing agency?
Yeah, Diptiji, we had a word, but I have a different view in that part of it. Maybe I'll share. It's totally my view. So power of inclusivity is very useful tool in today's era. That's the definitely involvement is should be there. Having involvement of corporates, non-profit, and the beneficiary together definitely creates an equal opportunity to work together to resolve the collective change and greater outcomes. But I don't know, my implementing agency will agree with me that we find lots of corporate partners wherein some corporate will just give us the funds and make sure that funds is used properly. Some would outcome will be partner with us, attend some events, assess things, and whether CSR they'll just monitor income and then just step on the utilization of fund. There are very few genuine corporate who really sits with us, spends a lot of time of work us to understand challenges. Otherwise, if you're not understanding challenges, sitting on desk and doing is very difficult for implement partner to explain the how we are not able to this meet out the goal. So this, I think, a corporate partner will able to help us if they join with friends with us and come to ground. And just to share a small thing, at United Way, we have designed an employee voluntary program. This has a positive engagement of corporates with the beneficiaries. So we make sure the corporate partners at all levels, not just staff level, but top management as well middle management, come to the beneficiary, talk to them, have some interaction with them with some intervention programs. Okay, and when they have an interaction program, they come to know these are the challenges of the ground reality. And then they're able to sense it out that way. Yeah, this is challenge. It's not an easy way to come out. It's not a production department. It's not mechanic thing. So you're changing a behavior and attitude of person. It takes a long of time. So we want our corporates and this program or voluntary programs with employees, they really help us to, meet up our challenges. No need to share to them. This is our challenge. They really understand this thing. And when jointly they come down, we need a healthy ecosystem and better well-being when all three of us will join to us that.
Yeah, very true, very true. On this note, I want to invite Mr. Pachania's views because in this is actually a teamwork between an implementation agency and a corporate. So you as a corporate, what are your views on this? When you look at an implementation agency and you look at the CSR activity that you have a vision for and is getting implemented.
Yeah, in fact, I was listening with quite interest when Binitha ji was talking about that, and I can very well understand the dilemma versus different viewpoints. So typically, when you're working with organizations like United Way of Baroda, you really don't have that governance issues and other things that you really need to take care of, whether it's act or not, but you really need to take care of certain basic hygiene and governance level things with your partner organization. But what has happened is with the act, I think now that option is getting slowly reduced. I was reading to someone posting in chat box also. I'll give you an example of me working with very small organization in Bombay. There were 10 very small organization, very focused organization, but very small organization. So we nurtured them for 2-3 years and we brought them to a certain level where they had all the documents in place. But I think now we really will not have that kind of option, because your first filter is you should have 12A NTG and CSR form. And this essentially restricts the organization of to extend their partnership with small organization until unless they have that kind of
ATG.
a process where they can do this. Now, coming back to what Vinita ji was saying, is it really depends on the organizations. Like for UPL, we have never given a single penny as a donation. It's mostly a partnership. Whether it's a small organization, a big organization, we really sit with them and we really work on each and everything, whether it's a project planning or whether it starts with the need assessment only. So we have really got involved into each and everything. So that's the way we work, and I'm sure a lot of organizations work that way. But I think there are also organizations which are more happy just contributing the financial part. So maybe I cannot comment on them, but I think in general, what I've seen in Gujarat and in general in our belt, people are really more into getting involved into the initiative in a more detailed way. But I'll come to one earlier question, Deepti ji, which was expected from me, how the CSR policy is being made and how does you implement or make a plan.
Yes,
I think the
annual action plan.
Yeah, so the way it happens in UPL, and I'm sure this must be a common practice with others also, we have identified few areas and few focus area for us. Like areas which are close to our business is one focus area. There are certain very backward pockets of country which are a focus area. Like we are working in Dang, we are working in Panchmal, we are working in Vidarbha, we are working in different pockets which are very backward pockets. So based on this identified pockets, we identify what are the needs for this particular community, and based on that need, we make a certain directional program. This can be one initiative. It's broadly a thematic base, whether it's for us, it's a sustainable livelihood, nature conservation, institution of excellence, as local and national area needs. So based on this, the policy gets devised. Earlier policy was more of a broad framework guidance. This needs to be done, and this is the framework under which it can be done. But now from this year, it's a kind of a very detailed action plan. Now, this is the framework, this is the guideline, these are the programs, these are the projects, these are the activities, and this is an outcome that's being expected. So that's a detailing that we have done this year for our CSR committee. So that's how the policy gets made. And I think it's very important for organizations, whether it's a small NGO or big organizations who really want to partner, they have to understand the DNA of the company's CSR. And that DNA is based on the geographical reach and the thematic focus that they really want to partner with. Me and Vinita ji, we can be very good friends and we can be very good socially, but if our organization compatibility is not there from a CSR perspective, the partnership will not happen. And that can only happen when it's aligned at a geographical level, one, second at a thematic level, because every corporate looks for a certain competencies that partner would like to bring to the table. It can be a small organization or it can be a big organization, but that's what is expected from everyone to bring to the table. So we have to keep that in mind. So that's how we really make our policy, we make our action plan. And at UPL, we have a pretty rigorous process of monitoring on a very regular basis, whether it's a monthly monitoring or an yearly documentation and third-party impact assessment on a very regular basis. So that's how it gets done. And I hope I have answered your question, Deepti.
Very true. So when you mentioned about the impact assessment, something that is close to my heart is what are the main parameters that you want to study on the impact assessment? You being a champion for social and change initiatives, what are those key things that you look at when you're making the impact assessment or looking at the review of the exercise?
Deepti, we really look for the impact that we have created. And when I say impact, we really never go for an outcome level indicator. So if I have to give you an example of my skill development initiative, my impact would be the change in livelihood that has happened because of this complete skill development, not the number of trainings that have completed or not the number of people who have got some kind of an employment, but what is a delta shift that has happened. That's one example. If I'm working on a agriculture development space, it's the income of farmer that has changed in 5 years. I may have thousands of training, I may have thousands of input program, but I think that's how we keep a track at an impact level. But at the same time, we really keep a focus on outcome indicators also, because that's something that really leads us to the impact. So that's the reason I said we have a very stringent and very strong monitoring mechanism. In fact, we have a monthly kind of a system, but very soon we'll be going on a real-time mode. So kind of a dashboard which will have a real-time. But it's a mix of outcome as well as an impact indicator. But I think you have to understand one thing. We do a very good need assessment and baseline study, because if you really don't have that, how will you measure your changes that you have brought in? And we went for a pretty detailed need assessment, and we have even bucketed the needs into 3 different categories, and which is the one that we really want to address at a long run and a short run and a medium. So maybe in offline, I'll be able to share that and we can have a good discussion over coffee.
Sure, look forward to. So this is like, it is really heartening to know that the CSR activity at UPL has been taken up in its true spirit, not just by mere letters on the act. That is a good heartening thing to know.
This is the only organization, as far as my knowledge goes, which has been spending more than 5% of net profit consistently for last 7 years.
Congratulations for that.
We've gone as high as 9.7% of net profit. This is the only organization that I know globally where giving back to society was started 50 years back, when we were not making a single penny profit. It's primarily to do with the promoter family's vision of giving back to society. But I think culturally we are very aligned to giving back to society and giving it in a way that it really helps society.
That's really heartening. In this same regard, I want to know from Mr. Pathak that whether the companies are required to take up impact assessment for FY 2021.
Mute.
Pathak sir, you're on mute. Pathak sir, you're on mute.
Pathak ji, aap mute pe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there is no specification as such, but keeping in view the provision, it appears that it would apply even for 2021.
Okay.
Not before that.
Okay, that's good. So
Act has a lot of gray area. This is one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have one question for Vinita ji on this. She has, oh my God, lot of. So when you talk about implementation and taking up in alignment, do you have any? Does your agency have set goals, set programs which you communicate to the corporates and invite their participation in that? How does it work?
Basically, we work whenever we decide a project with a corporate. We like to align the organization strategy and missions with the corporate objective first. If they're aligned, then only we like to take the project up. Otherwise, we like to say that it's not in our kitty part of it, sort of thing. And secondly, we look for the outcome of a project. So if a project is designed and we look for the project outcome, what we're expecting, is it feasible or not? Because aiming for a high goal is good enough to present it up, but when to achieve, it's very, very difficult. So we work on 2 things. First, the organized strategy should be and mission of the corporate as well as NGO partner should be aligned. Second, the outcome should be feasible to reply to it. If they both are gel, we take it up. Is that way we do it. And in United Way Bureau, every project, what Rishi ji was saying, yes, we have a very clear need assessment study. So whenever we approach our corporate partner, we clearly say we need to have some research fund or maybe maze analysis or situational analysis situation done. And based on that, we'll design the program for you. So our program starts with need assessment part of it or maybe the baseline part of it. And then we design the buckets, which bucket you really want to work on it. Maybe on education, health, social inclusion, livelihood, whatever things. We'll give them the whole parameter of the view and then we take it up. So we have a very clearly defined planning, monitoring, evaluation process, which help us to understand the components of the project in a very clear, concise, and logical and systematic way. So we know how to take this project up. It's not in the midway now what to do.
Yeah.
So we take a lot of time initially to understand the complete need assessment, plan our LFA. That's a logical framework matrix. We make it up. Which clearly says what is the activities, and with this activity, what's the output is going to come up. Because output is also very necessary to know how many trainings you have done. Now, with this training, what is the outcome basically? With this training, has any change found in the trainer part of it? Has it implemented it very successfully? So, output and outcome are always linked, and then we have a specific verified indicator developed on it. How to achieve this output? How to achieve this outcome? So, these indicators really help us to tap on our milestones. Are we on right path, or we're moving on the right path? But major constraint what implementing partners is that they give the good projects for everyone, but they don't work on the risk, they don't work on the limitations part, and they don't work on assumptions. Because situation 3 are it's not in our hand. Risk, whenever it can come down, we don't know how it is. Limitations, how maybe some limitation we know what is our limitation, we can't do things. But assumptions, we should really plan out very clearly. If this happens, this is not going to happen, the indicator. This should be very, very clearly said in the proposal itself to the corporate. So at the end of the day, they don't come and say why this has not been achieved. This is the thing. So we really work initially for one whole quarter on this basis and present the project to them. This is what we do it.
So eventually you are able to do a nice scoping and qualitative and quantitative analysis.
So like for impact assessment, so we really work on the holistic impact assessment. It's not that just doing the program assessment. We will focus on impact of CSR initiatives by the corporate, by the community, as well by the implementing partners. So all the three has to play a major role. In assessment of activities, CSR, kya kar diya, kya school bana liya, bachcho ko bula liya. That's not assessment. How all the three of it involved. Is the beneficiary coming to the school? Is corporate having a say in that part of it? And is implementation doing proper implementation to ensure the children come to school with the quality education part imparted to them. So we want all the holistic part of the work with, and we have various tools with us. Like for impact assessment, we know we can do scoping, we can do quality analysis, quantitative analysis, cost benefit analysis, we can do it up based on the project what has been done. So impact assessment definitely has to be done. At least you should use 3 years for the impact assessment. It can't be 1 year. If everybody says impact in 1 year, and we say no, it can't be an impact in 1 year. It has to be at least a start of impact should be 3rd year coming up. And very good what this government has done is 3 + 1 year. So in 3 + 1, at least the impact will start coming up. And last year, we can really present the impact, what we really thought in the purpose or goal, what we kept it up. That is what the DP is doing.
Okay, the very, very well answered on this. And I think I'm clear. I had a lot of doubts on these things, on a lot of how the whole exercise is taken up, how the partnership is done with the corporates, and how the goals are decided. I have some question for Mr. Pathak. This is like, if a company has earmarked its unspent amount for the year 2021 to the ongoing project of one canalizing agency in March 21, however, that agency was not registered either under Section 12A or 80G of Income Tax Act and did not have unique CSR registration at that time. Is it legally tenable?
There are 2 dimensions. One dimension, that CSR, this unique number that was available only after 1st April. So that is absolutely rolled out. So far as registration under Section 80G and 12A is concerned, practically what I think that when this was notified on 22nd January 2021, so many of the organizations may not have this registration overnight. So to expect from that they are registered on that very date is a bit difficult to digest. One thing, if we read the fine print, what they say that these canalizing agencies can undertake these activities if they are registered under 80G, 12A, etc. So what I mean, there does not appear to be any harm in identifying that and earmarking to the ongoing project. And once they are registered, money can be given to them. That's my broad understanding. And there is no clarification on this aspect. This is purely my understanding.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. One more, I have got a lot of questions for you, sir.
Oh, so nice.
This act has actually, sent us all on dizzy. So on reading rule 4 of the rules, it appears that a company undertaking CSR activities by itself is also required to file CSR1 and obtain unique CSR registration number. Is it so?
Yes, if we literally interpret the wordings of the rules, it appears like that. But if we file CSR1 form, then we don't find any field for the company itself. So we can feel that, okay, company is not required to file.
Okay.
But then this is, I think, this is the paradox of our Indian legal system, that sometimes law provides, but system does not provide. Sometimes law prohibits, still system allows.
So we were all under the impression that we, as a company, has to file the CSR1 form. But as you are saying, it is not for the company and it is only for the implementation agency.
Yes, you're right.
You have something to say on this?
No, the same thing, sorry.
Yeah.
As far as my understanding is, the CSR form is only for the non-profit 12-way, the trust society or Section 8 company, whether it's company promoted or other. But if companies are doing directly, then it's not there, CSR1 as of now. It's only for the partner organization or implementing organization.
I would like to add one more dimension to
One
that.
more dimension. Yeah, I also need to put one more dimension.
Okay, please.
Please, Devesh. Yeah. So basically, it's not implementing partner has to take CSR number, but the corporate has to take this number when they have to fill the reporting disclose. They need to disclose in Annexure 2. The corporate has to take the number from implement partner to enclose into it that way. So Rishi, you need to take the number of your partner to include in your reporting part.
Yeah, but Binita ji, what I'm saying is, see, I'm having 3 modes of operation in UPL. One is we are implementing something directly from the company. One, we are implementing through our own foundation. Third is we are working with the partner organization. So my partner organization, my own promoted foundation, they should have CSR1. There will be something that I can implement directly from the company. That doesn't apply. Yeah, that's what I was
100%. No, okay. I misunderstood that thing.
Yeah. So one more dimension. Fourth entity, or rather canalizing agency, that is inserted in. So that has opened Pandora's box, where they say that any entity established under any act of parliament or state legislature. So in that case, any such entity can help as an implementing agency, where rule even does not provide that they need registration under Section 80G or even 12A. Of course, that it would not be their intention, but yes, it has opened up Pandora's box.
Exactly. That's where you talked about ONGC carrying out implementation. It's true. In fact, in the reporting thing, they have made this. Now they have made changes in the reporting part also.
Yeah.
Yes, there are a lot of details which are to be, included in the reporting and the disclosures. That is one part which is good in a way, adding more transparency. I also have one more question that, on reading section 135(4) of the Act as well as Rule 9 of the rules, it can be inferred that the company should place particulars of CSR activities on its website, if any. Now, if the company does not have website, should it create website for this purpose? Typically, it is like, a company who is eligible for CSR would be having a website, but if it doesn't have, then what?
If we strictly interpret, in that case, if they don't have website, they need not install website for this very purpose. But as you rightly said, company which is covered under CSR provisions, obviously they would have website.
Yes. And I think there is now a change that, the company which have got a spending, that is for the CSR committee, I believe, that if the spending has to be less than 50 lakh, then you don't need to have a CSR committee, right?
Yes. You're right.
Yes. Some of the changes, going through, very difficult to understand all of it. So,
I would like to add in this question that some of the people hurriedly read that CSR committee would not be required if spending would be rupees 50 lakhs or lesser. So they were much happy that we are out of CSR provisions, but it is not so.
no. Okay, it is only the committee requirement.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely,
But then to good governance can still have the committee continued as it is.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. So you mentioned about the vaccination. So if the CSR expenditure is done for employees, then I believe it is not eligible.
As of the date, no.
Okay. This is one where something where one-time ex gratia payments for employee fighting for COVID-19, is it eligible for CSR expenditure?
Not for employee. For casual worker, it is okay. Ex gratia payment.
Okay, if it is for
Not
casual,
for employee.
okay, casual daily wage workers, it is.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is a very important thing. So please highlight on this.
Yes, and that too only one time, as a one-time exception.
Okay, as a
Yeah.
one-time expenses for any fighting for COVID-19 restricted to casual or daily wage workers.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And whether contribution to corpus is eligible as CSR expenditure?
This is very, liquid point in a way that earlier in the clarification they mentioned that when a contribution is to the corpus for some entity which has primary object falling in Schedule 7, then yes, you can contribute to corpus. In clarification, we still find that. But in the rules, now we don't find the word corpus, which we earlier found in the rules.
Okay.
So, to be on safer side, one can say that now contribution to corpus is not allowed.
All right. Correct. So there's one more question that I have a lot of it, but there's one important. Whether unspent amount earmarked for ongoing project can be used for any other CSR expenditure?
As such, there is neither any clarification nor rule specifies anything. But the thing is that when there is unspent amount, so in that case, that have to be covered in annual action plan.
Okay.
And in annual action plan, it is mentioned that it can be changed.
All right.
So I would like to share a joke in lighter way that one person approached the doctor. He said that I have a cold and please give me medicine. Doctor said you wear a gumboot and fill the ice cubes in it and wear it for whole of the night. Then he asked, patient asked whether my cold would be cured. He said, no. You will have pneumonia. And I have medicine for pneumonia.
Got it. Got it. Now I've got, my questions will never end and, I'll keep on talking to you. But then our participants, I can see they have a lot of questions. So with your permission, panelists, I open this session for question answers? Yeah. I'll just read out from the chat as we go. So we have one question from Mr. Choksi that we are a private company and CSR is being done through donating contribution to various charitable and educational institutions. If we have donated, say, 20 lakhs to such institute and if they have spent only 15 lakhs out of it, will they also require to transfer unspent amounts in separate bank account? If yes, will they open such bank account for each donor?
Yes. If we read the letters of law, you have to open that account and transfer the amount by 30th April. Today is 29th April.
Okay, so we have only one day left.
Yes.
I have one more question saying that, what if the transfer is not done on 30th April, say if it is done on 5th of May, then
let's wait for some circular from the MCA.
Right now, we don't have any, sir, right?
Right now we don't have.
We don't.
Okay. So we have one more. I'll just take this. There is this clause of, registration for 12A and ATG to be done before 30th June. I mean, but the utility is still not available. So how do we, what are your views on it?
So that's what my interpretation is, that you gave them only if they are registered. Till that time you hold it in account.
Okay, thank you. If the company failed to transfer unspent amount to special bank account by 30th April due to present pandemic situation, whether company and officer in default will be prosecuted?
I have got WhatsApp message from ROC office. They have advised stakeholders not to visit ROC office because many of them are also suffering COVID-19.
Yeah. So it is, I think maybe we will very soon we'll get some extension on the date if the thing is, or maybe some.
I think that it is our duty, Chamber of Commerce or FGI also, that we should write that during this pandemic situation, it is a high time to extend such limit, deadline.
Yes. Do we open a separate bank account for each financial year? Yes, I presume.
There is no specification as such, but it would be advisable because it will help to keep a track. Because unspent amount can be utilized only for 3 years, so in that case it would be advisable, though not mandatory.
Yes. Dr. Benita, you mentioned about the period available for the spending. So that is 3 years, right?
3 plus 1.
3 plus
1 will start. You don't consider the first year for 3 years then.
Okay, great. I have one more question here which says that, sir, we have adopted Anganwadi from VMC and we are spending money on it. Is it covered in CSR activity?
As said, there are detailed entries in Schedule 7. So you compare it with Schedule 7. My suggestion is also that whenever you give donation to any implementing agency, you ask for trust deed or say their bylaws or say memorandum and articles of association, as the case may be, so that you can also determine whether that agency is entitled to carry out those activities or not. And you will be able to verify also, rather telling it with the entries of Schedule 7, whether that fits into that or not.
Okay, thanks. Then there is this question from Mr. Devraj KN. CSR registration number is not required for entity implementing project approved prior to 1st April 2021. Whether the new projects approved by board during March 21 to be implemented during financial year 21-22 require partners with CSR registration number?
Yes.
Okay. We need the registration number for 12A and ATG.
Because after 1st April, at least those entities who are canalizing agency, who are undertaking these activities, because they have used the word agencies undertaking activities must have this registration.
So there is this, in view of budget 2020, all trusts need to get revalidated their registration. And now they'll be provided registration under section 12AB. Will this be fine since CSR rules say that trust registered under section 12A?
Because they have specifically mentioned for 12A. So I don't think that 12AB registration will hold good.
Okay. Then this is, do we need to open separate bank account for each year? We just addressed this. Then there is a question from Ms. Choksi again. What does CSR rule relating to capital asset mean practically? What is capital asset from the viewpoint of donor not doing CSR on its own, but through various trusts? The asset created by the trust, that is college constructing computer lab for students to whom the donation is given, will it have any impact on donor to claim it as CSR?
Capital asset, as I understand, means a sort of say building or say some sort of say permanent infrastructure, etc.
Yeah. So we have one more question which says, can we consider convert an existing current account with bank as ongoing CSR project account for unspent amount. I think this depends on the bank. I don't think they will change the purpose.
I would like to add that yes, you can utilize the current banking account, but it should be sort of escrow account, because thereafter company will have right to utilize exclusively for CSR purpose.
Exactly. As such, with the new rule that the RBI has come out with in August 2020, all the current accounts that a client opens, they are monitored and with the purpose.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So then this is one more question which says, to every new financial year, is it necessary to open new bank account? This question has come again. From which financial year impact assessment will get started? Please give an example.
Yes, so there are the provisions in a way that if it is prolonging for more than 1 year, then I think impact assessment would come into play.
Okay.
Apart from other provisions also like 10 crores, 1 crore, etc., etc.
Yes, yes, yes.
In fact, I have already shared my presentation also, and Premal Bhai, he is kind enough to share it. He has consented to share it. So you'll find those provisions in my...
That would be a pleasure, and most of the participants would be really happy to go through your presentation.
So nice of you.
Yes, in fact, I've already received many requests asking for your presentation to be shared. So,
yes, we will share that for
yes,
sure.
So nice of you.
Yes. Then this is about impact assessment report through independent agency is not applicable to us. But since rules mention that company has to report on impact assessment, how should it be done practically? Should we obtain and check bills of each spending by trust to whom we contribute? Can we ask trust to obtain CA certificate in this regard and submit to us? Will this certificate serve the purpose of impact assessment? These are quite a lot of questions from Mr. Choksi.
So far as impact assessment is concerned, I think I have answered.
Yes. Yes.
But rest of the things, say, it is, to my view, it is highly subjective. But so far as impact assessment, I think we have my fellow speakers, they are more experts on that aspect at least.
You are more expert in that case.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing that, me, while being on a certain CSR committee myself, we always, when we look at the spending that is done, we are always happy to have an impact assessment study done of all the funds that are deployed. So this is one part is, that 10 crore, 1 crore is one thing. But other than that, it is always better to have an impact assessment study done by an independent agency who is qualified to take up the financial aspect of it, along with that, the survey part of it, the social impact part of it. So there are many agencies, including FinCare, who do these impact assessment studies. So this is something, which actually completes the whole circle of CSR objective. True. Thanks for the word. Yeah. Then one more question: is it compulsory to put fund in current account? If current account is not open, can we transfer fund to separate fixed deposit account temporarily till current account is open? This has come from Mr. Matan Parekh.
As such, there is no specification in the rules that there has to be current account. Only thing what they say that you have to transfer money in this special, scheduled bank. So in a way, I feel that even if it is transferred to fixed deposit also, then also I think it may be considered as sufficient compliance. Only thing they have to keep in mind that if they would receive interest, in that case, interest also should be plowed back. They cannot utilize for business purpose.
Exactly. I think this is in link with what you mentioned that, if there is any earning arising out of any activity of CSR, that has to be plowed back to the CSR activity and not to the business activity.
Absolutely. Or alternatively, they can transfer in unspent CSR account also, which is sort of the escrow account.
All right. Thank you. One more question. There are many small trusts, NGOs who are not registered or not capable enough to bear expenses and process required for registration and thereafter relevant compliance. Can we say that by mandating all these or came up with stringent regulations, these small NGO or trusts going to collapse? This is a question which is
There are two dimensions to it. Once again, one thing that why this compulsory registration? My view is that if they are compulsorily registered under income tax and under Companies Act also, in that case there would be proper monitoring. And in say capital market language, fly-by-night operators would not be there. Hopefully. But then it does not stop company from helping such small organizations in a way that company can directly make expenditure.
True.
So in that case, they can be and help can be extended to them also. They can help. This is my view.
Yeah, which means that the company does the entire monitoring, budgeting, planning, reporting, the entire activity as a project while getting involved with these kind of smaller ratios. Oh yes, this is one. There is a question which says that there is a specific question on CSR spending in consonance with RTI Act 2005. At the CSR activity carried out for general society and public, in and can the RTI Act applies to entity who is doing CSR activity but who is not? I'm not able to read the other.
Okay, but at least whatever I have understood, I'll tell you that. So I mean regarding transfer of capital assets. So there it is mentioned that there are three options are given. So one of them is public authority. That it can be transferred to public authority. Now, what is public authority? So, interestingly, definition of public authority is given in the CSR rules, where they have mentioned that public authority means public authority under RTI Act. But I would not like to reply as to who is public authority under RTI Act, because there is a lot of controversies. So I would not like to plunge into that.
True. So there is could you please throw some light with respect to fixed deposit account? I believe we have to, as sir has already answered this on this. Is there something, am I missing? Wait, lots of questions.
Can you take the Sandeep Sheth?
Yes, so whether school fees paid directly by company for a child who is not an underprivileged child, but due to unfortunate death of his father, unable to meet such expenses, falls under eligible CSR expenses if company has opted for all activities of Schedule 7 under its CSR policy, please advise.
Yeah, company should have invoice of that expenditure. When company has directly made expenditure, they should keep in built with that.
I think Mr. Seth, this is allowed, and it can be same thing. We have to maintain its the entire project, its expenses, monitoring, and it has to be an approved expense, maybe taken in that plan adopted by the CSR committee.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Then there is a. Where is it? Another question. Not. I think are we done with the questions? Yes. We are done with the questions, more or less. If there's any other thing, any other point that is to be highlighted, we had an extremely enlightening and invigorating session today. It was we are able to have a lot of thought process around the changes in the law, the concept of forming the CSR policies, how corporates want to take up the contribution to the society, how implementing agencies come in place, and how they are in sync with the vision. So a point that I would like to note is Binita Ben was very clear about, no, we just don't take up any activity. It has to be in sync with the vision of the corporate. So a very positive. So this all thing has come up in a very positive way. I would, with your permission, I would like to sum up the session here. We heard our esteemed
Just
yes, sorry.
Just 1 minute. I have unmuted the participants. I've given them the option to unmute. So if any of the participants would want to raise any query, they can voice it out by unmuting themselves.
Yeah, I have a question for Devesh Pathak, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, with regard to that fixed deposit account. Yeah,
Okay.
Could you please just brush it up once again quickly?
Yeah, in a way, that rule does not specify that it has to be current account. So in that case, unspent amount can be transferred to FD also if it is planned that it will be useful, say only after 1 year or say only after 2 years. And in any case, that unspent amount can be utilized for 3 years. So in that case, that can be done. But only thing, whatever is the income from that FD by way of income or anything, so that should also be utilized for the purpose of CSR.
So can it be, can it be like that once the amount is transferred to the fixed deposit, then
Right.
We can process it out for the account opening process for the unspent account. And when the unspent account is active, then we can transfer the whole of the FD account to the unspent account, and then we can utilize it for the further, you can say, the beneficiaries or the beneficial purpose. So can it be done like that way?
I think law does not prohibit this.
Okay.
Because so long as you will not, company will not utilize this amount. So I think it is permissible. In lighter way, I always say whatever is not prohibited is permitted. And there is no that does not appear to be any prohibition. And as I understand, throughout your intention would be to keep it, company will not touch that amount except for the purpose of utilizing CSR expenditure, right?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
Pathak sir, could this be that, if suppose just a thought that this amount, can a demand draft be made of this amount as an outgo from the company in favoring the company's account name for the CSR? And then once the account opening, because I understand from his query that there must be some technical glitch in opening the account. So can this be done?
So there are two things. One thing, either we should wait for circular for MCA for extension, or alternatively, compared to opening of current account, I think placing fixed deposit is a bit easier.
Yes. Thank you.
My pleasure. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, please?
Mr. Pragnesh Chopsy.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, we make a lot of donations, but to my belief, they are all registered under Section 80G or 12A. I believe they are not the public trust or registered society or Section 8 companies. So as per Rule 4, does that mean that the private trust cannot now take the donation? I mean, we cannot donate them as a CSR?
Yes,
or if they have a 3 years track record, then can we donate it?
No, even then it is not allowed. Only in case of this Section 8 company or trust or society, which is established by central government, rather government, there they have used the word trust, registered trust, and not registered public trust. In rest of the clauses, they have categorically used the word public trust. So I am of the opinion that yes, private trust would not work.
Okay, so does that mean that they'll also have to become maybe a public trust, or they have to register themselves as society or something like that?
Absolutely.
It is in a way it is compulsory now. So
Yes, absolutely.
okay, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, my bad.
Okay. Any other participants? Any other questions, please? Come on, please take opportunity of clarifying all your doubts. We have with us the most sought after dignitaries from the implementation agency as well as from the consultancy points, because Pachak sir is an authority on company law. Any questions you have? Or
yeah, good evening, Mr. Devesh. One question, in the May 20, ICA has issued us advisory for the CS to get a CS certificate of utilization. Is it mandatory or it is recommendatory? They have prescribed a format also.
For which purpose?
For the getting the utilization certificate from the NGOs or the implementing partners.
Okay. So far, as CSR rules are concerned, there is no specification.
Right.
Yeah.
Anybody else, please? Mr. Dave, do we take up summarizing the session?
Absolutely.
Yes. So, as one of the most enriching session that I attended today, and it's a pleasure for me to summarize it. I am at a loss, really don't know how to summarize it, because there's been like, you know, a flow of thoughts, a flow of rules, changes, implementation, but still saw very, very bright ideas coming out. We heard our esteemed speakers throw light on the recent amendments in CSR rules. Mr. Pathak's presentation on the amendment and its different dimensions was an eye-opener. While we read the text in bold letters, Mr. Pathak looks into the fine print and has highlighted the amendments in terms of eligibility, compliance, reporting, implementation, responsibility of CSR committee, filing of Form C1, ongoing projects, impact assessment, and publishing of CSR policy, implementation details on the website, to name a few. Mr. Pachania took us through the corporate side of the CSR compliance, while he dwelled on the nuances of formation of policy, the annual action plan, getting it through CSR committee, identifying the project, execution through implementation agency and its reporting, monitoring, documenting, and assessing the benefits drawn from the exercise. In fact, so much so that not just quarterly, they're talking about even the monthly reporting, and now talking about a real-time monitoring of the CSR activity. It was highly engaging session for corporates to draw benefits from. And personally, as a chair CSR committee, found it to be very, very informative. My special mention of Mrs. Benita Verde talking about power of inclusivity, and who also spoke about very useful tool in today's era for having involvement of corporates, non-profit, and beneficiaries together with equal opportunity to work and resolve collective challenges and look forward for greater outcomes. Inclusivity has enhanced participations of all the stakeholders and built ownership and responsibility towards well-being of society. The role played by implementation agencies is highly pivotal, as it bridges the gap between the stakeholders and contributes significantly towards the transformation through economic, social, and political intermediation. This has actually triggered a lot of action points which we discussed and all. I'm sure we all will be very happy to take anything further. If there are any queries from the participants or any doubts that you have, you're free to write to us. And I hand over the session to Mr. Premal Dave, with special mention for having this session as his brainchild, right from conceptualizing to bringing it together to this level. Over to you, Mr. Dave, with a big thanks.
Thank you for acknowledging the efforts. Now, the part that I would really not like to have still is the vote of thanks. We could have continued the session. There were amazing discussions, and the speakers had thrown real great light. So our esteemed guest speakers for the day, once again, our CS Devesh Pathak sir. Mr. Rishi Pathania, Dr. Binita Verdia, and of course our wonderful moderator, Ms. Deepti Sharma. The FGI Executive and Managing Committee members, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, I have indeed the proud privilege to propose a hearty vote of thanks on behalf of FGI to our guest speakers for their crisp and clear presentations and for their and solving queries of the participants. I'm sure that hearing from the experts in CSR field, the participants have enlightened themselves on the important amendments in CSR provisions, relevant rules, and recent emerging trends and responsibilities, and have also updated their knowledge on the impact assessment of CSR initiatives, which is an important latest addition. I would also like to thank Ms. Deepti Sharma for moderating this session very well, and all the participants who are present in this session for making this webinar a great success. We had about 100 participants in this session. So it was a really great, session. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll ask for a feedback with our follow-up email, and we'll also share the presentation latest by tomorrow. I thank once again. May I now request everyone to rise above for the national anthem, please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
It was our pleasure.
Thanks, our pleasure.
Thanks.
Very well organized, and everybody contributed.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
and be
Thank you so
safe.
much.
Be
Thanks.
safe and be careful and help each other. Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks, Dr. Binita. Thanks, Devesh.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Bye, Aarti. Thank you.
Wish you all great health.
Bye. See ya.